Hello, everybody, and welcome to Unscripted Intelligence. This is a podcast where we talk about human intelligence, artificial intelligence, how they intersect, and how they impact everything from education to the workforce.
On this podcast, we interview innovators, change makers, and thought leaders who are shaking things up and making waves. These conversations are unfiltered and uncharted as we create space for what isn't being discussed. And always, these conversations are
unavoidable.
Hi, everyone. I'm Michelle Ament, the co-president of the Human Intelligence Movement and chief academic officer of ProSolve. The Human Intelligence Movement is a grassroots community of individuals that are dedicated to ensuring that all humans have the human intelligences they need to succeed and thrive in our AI world. So great to be here. Excited for this episode.
And my name is Arvin Ross, the co-founder of ProSolve, a company dedicated to developing the human skills that students need to be successful in an AI-driven world. I'm also your adaptability enthusiast, and I'm super excited to be co-hosting this podcast. Thank you guys for joining into these live discussions. Let's get into this episode. Welcome.
Hi, Arvin. We're live.
We're live.
The real deal.
Yeah, thanks, Jenna, for our new intro. That was very excruciating to watch.
It was terrible. I look like a statue. I mean, I'm just like sitting there smiling at you.
You're great. You did great. We'll just redo it for the next couple of ones.
Well, it's so good to be on this episode with you, Arvin. I'm Michelle Ament and the co-president of the Human Intelligence Movement and chief academic officer for ProSolve. I'm excited to be here live with everyone tonight. We've got a great episode ahead of us.
Yes, thank you very much. And I'm Arvin Ross, co-founder of ProSolve, also co-host here. And I'm excited as well. Today's episode is a little bit different than our prior ones. Today's episode is actually a recap of some of the great conversations we've had, interviewing thought leaders and change makers all across the United States. We are going to recap some of those conversations today. We're going to highlight and surface some of those questions that we asked during those podcasts, and we're also going to make them live so that all of you who are watching and all of you who are listening can hop in live and answer those questions as well. So we've had some pretty dope hosts or some pretty dope guests on here as we've hosted these live discussions. And I want to go ahead and kick it off to you, Michelle, to bring up one that you want to surface first.
Well, before we get into that, okay, I gotta ask you, Arvin, this week you told me that you really made some, quote, major progress, end quote, on your AI journey. So before we get into the guests, tell me about this major progress you've made.
So a friend of mine who is actually my mentor, his name is Chris Allen. He started a company called Career Hacks and careerhacks.ai. And essentially it's all about training people how to use AI in order to make their jobs better, to do their jobs better. And I just never really, I thought I was proficient in the use of AI. And within 10 minutes of meeting with him, I quickly realized I had no freaking idea what I was doing. And so we sat there and we did a deep dive, and he taught me about prompting and taught me about the different types of AI. I mean, I thought after my session with Kunal that I was just on top. Not at all. Mm-hmm. So I learned a lot about prompting. It then took me down kind of a rabbit hole of different ways to train and to prompt engineer, which is apparently like a whole thing that I had no idea about prior to like 4 days ago. And it's radically changed my workflow. I have a couple different projects in my ChatGPT 5, and it is just, I'm creating these really insane, intricate research chats that are spitting out 17 30-something page documents, right? Doing a ton of research, and then I'm feeding those documents into some of my other chats and making them experts on those documents and learning about stuff that I just had no concept or no even desire to learn about. But now I'm kind of having these conversations. And so I
was going to say, Chris, sorry, you want to finish?
No, go ahead.
So, I hear you. Chris is a mastermind when it comes to AI workflow. And I have learned from him the art of like using multiple applications. Like I was really just focused on ChatGPT, but now I use Gemini and Perplexity and am working like all three of them in different ways, producing different results and really kind of helping me see things in different perspectives. So I know exactly what you're talking about when I spend time with Chris, I walk away with like this new, like brilliant new idea. And I just love talking to him. So, you actually have a Gemini Pro account, which I need to get you logged into.
Yeah, I was going to say, I didn't know that. And yeah. I must be nowhere near as far as I thought I was, because I am still just using chat and using multiple projects that communicate. So,
and this one, like what I love to do is produce like a 50-page research document, and then I just like share that with people and like, you read this, like it's super, But anyway, no, so prompting became your big takeaway this week, being a prompt engineer. That's like a job now that people do. I never even heard of a prompt engineer 18 months ago.
Yeah, there's tons of YouTube videos out there. Maybe we'll link some a little bit later, or maybe if we can get Chris's schedule down and have him on one of these episodes, he can kind of tell us a little bit more. But there is really some dope formulas out there for how to properly engineer and craft a prompt in order to get your AI bot or your chat bot to respond to what it is that you want. And one of the things that he taught me is, using the chat bot to teach you how to create the prompt to the bot. And I'm like, it's just such a simple concept that I just like had no freaking idea. So I'm asking my chat, hey, I want to create a prompt that will help you understand very quickly and easily how to become an expert at this, and how to help me produce a body of work that is intended for this audience, that has this tone, that is in this format. Here's an example, and then it will create the prompt.
Yes.
Copy and paste the prompt, maybe edit a couple things here or there, and then put that prompt back into the chat or into another project. And it spits out exactly what I want. And it's like, so I'm asking you how to talk to you to get what I want from you. It's wild.
Well, and then like what you could do is just voice to text what you want. You don't even have to type it out. You could just sit there and talk to it, and then say, write me a prompt that will produce an output based on what I've told you. So, there's that element of the voice to text as well. And I think in a couple of weeks in September, Dr. Saba Kidwai is going to be on the show, and she has a whole Spark framework that I think you will like, because the K stands for Kismet. And did I say that right? Kismet?
I have no idea.
Do you even know what that is?
No, do I gotta look it up?
I didn't either until I read about her framework, but it's called Spark. And Kismet is like things that are like unexpected, like surprises, novel ideas. And so it prompts asking for something that you wouldn't have thought to ask for it to give you. So it's interesting. Yeah. So we could talk to her about the Spark framework. And then of course we got to get Chris on the show. His company is Career Hacks AI, is one of our partners for the human intelligence movement. Did you know that?
I didn't know that. I didn't know that. That's dope.
Well, let's talk about these 5 episodes. Can you believe we've had 5 episodes?
No, doesn't make any sense. How are we allowed to do this? Why have we not been shut down yet? The biggest win is that we have not been canceled yet. And the second biggest win is that I didn't say anything specifically that got us canceled. So
that is a big win. That's like a major metric that we're still doing it. But we started out and we've had numerous guests, and across all 5 episodes, we've talked about like, what are the unavoidable truths? What are the things that maybe no one is talking about, but we all should be talking about? And so tonight, let's dive into some of these unavoidable truths. So one of the unavoidable truths that surfaced kind of across all of the episodes was that AI is unavoidable. Mm-hmm. And that really was Matt who just dropped it like it was. AI is unavoidable, but across all of the episodes, that's been a major truth. And I think with that comes this idea that even though AI is unavoidable in our schools, at least most leaders and the education system still feels a little bit like they're acting like it's optional.
Right.
So that definitely has been a theme. We can talk more about that tonight.
Yeah.
Next one was a hot one last week, and that is that AI literacy is a buzzword.
Dude got so triggered. He was so triggered when I said that. And you set me up. You literally set me up for that, and I forgive you.
I knew. I mean, like that was a bold statement to make. That AI literacy is a buzzword. But there's some truth to that. And these, buzzwords like this don't change systems. And so I think that's really an important truth to tackle and think about. Yeah. Another theme that came across all of them is that we are still measuring the wrong things. Facts. And if we want to have a world that thrives in an AI world, we need to be measuring and focused on human intelligence. And so that whole idea of we're still measuring the wrong things. Yeah.
I mean, I would argue we've been measuring the wrong things for quite a long time now. And I think AI, the rise of AI is kind of exposing it more now because it's just such a chasm that is being created because of this technology, like a chasm of possibility. And totally. So I feel like you would agree with this, and most people would agree that we have been measuring the wrong things for quite some time. It's just becoming more visible now.
Well, absolutely. I mean, the idea that I can think about many times when we worked on how do we diversify, change the measurement to be more inclusive of the whole student. Mm-hmm. And now it's just like there's such an urgency. And I think it's less about, I think the measurement matters. It totally matters. But what is more important to me is we focus on what we measure. And so if we have measures around human intelligence, then our schools and our systems will focus on human intelligence and prioritize it. And then that is what we need to be doing. So I'm getting us off track. Okay, so next we've got another theme that we had was that the dependency on AI erodes human intelligence. And that was like a subtle theme. We never really, hit that boldly, but that's something out there that's unavoidable, that if we get too dependent on AI, we're going to erode our human intelligence. So there's more to talk about there for sure. And then the big one that I heard over and over again also was this idea of adaptability, and adaptability being the survival skill set for AI and needing to create the conditions for adaptability.
Yeah, I agree. I'd say those themes are pretty consistent through all of them. And when I say I agree that those themes were consistent, I don't think that I agree with all of the statements. For instance, the dependability on AI eroding human intelligence. I think an improper dependability, or dependency will erode it. But I feel like even in those discussions, some of the guests were able to share ways in which using and being quote unquote dependent on certain AI platforms actually has a way to enhance and develop human intelligence and some of those human skills. But nonetheless, let's hop into what some of those episodes highlighted specifically. And I'll let you go first on which episode you want to highlight.
Okay. Well, I think we start at the beginning. The beginning of the story was Jen Womble came on, and she was our first guest. I remember being so nervous, like not really sure what was going to happen. And what a great person to be our first guest, because she's so personable and it just was easy to talk with. But, she dropped a really big truth bomb. She said, the future isn't coming, it's here. Yeah. And if you're waiting to get ready, you're already behind, which I thought was really, really important to think about as we think about what it means to be future ready. Like, it's no longer about future ready, it's here. And so we talked a lot about what leaders need to be doing to build that innovation. And I think there's this kind of theme that that I want to hear your opinion about, which is around this whole idea of compliance. And do you really think that leaders are being blocked by the system, not allowing them to be innovative? Or do you think there's something else that's getting in the way of the lack of innovation and that kind of sense of we're behind?
Yeah, I'll respond, and then I'd love to hear your thoughts. And then anyone in the audience who's listening or watching, please feel free to answer this question as well. Michelle, can you ask the question one more time?
It was kind of a long, rambling question. So do you think leaders are truly blocked by a system that doesn't allow them to innovate? Or do you think there's a fear of something else behind that?
Okay, so my response is yes to some leaders, and then probably more for some other leaders. I from that episode, even as I watched it back, I kind of developed 3 C's that I didn't think about in the time, but when I was watching it back, it just kind of popped in my head. That I think the reason why that a lot of leaders don't see the kind of growth increase and development that they want to see, it's not just for compliance. I think it's also because of comfort and cowardice. I feel
okay. Hold on. You said comfort and
cowardice, like fear, like being a coward.
Yeah, coward.
And I'm not trying to offend anybody, but you probably will be. I have found, and in my experience, especially working in education for however many years, what is it, 15, 16 years now, the compliance is something like compliance to so many different factors. How can I say this without being rude? Okay.
You say it.
Let me switch it up. The educators and administrators that I have seen do phenomenal, groundbreaking, earth-shaking, student life-changing work are all ones that have gone against the grain at some point in time. Yeah. Are individuals who have either risked their career or have risked, taking really big gambles on their staff and their people and what it is that they know, that they feel in their heart, that some person that's legislating, 1,000 miles away or in a whatever, that can never feel and experience, right? I feel as though the teachers and educators and administrators that I've seen have massive impact, have all pushed past things that many individuals who want to just keep their job and stay safe and stay comfortable could never push past. So I don't think that it is just a compliance issue. I think it's deeper than that. I think it's a hard issue. I think there's a passion issue. I feel like I've seen a lot of individuals who started out their road into education with this fire just blazing on them, just to change the world and to ignite and to share that fire with other people. And then year after year after year after year, I see that fire dying, right? I go back to some of the same schools that we've done PD in, 5 years, 3 years, 2 years later. And it's like the teachers that were gung-ho about escape rooms in the classroom or were gung-ho about devices. It's like every year that fire is just growing dimmer and dimmer and dimmer and dimmer. And so, I don't think it's just compliance. I think there's a lot of factors that play into it.
Well, I'm glad you brought up courage, because I think that is a huge thing that all leaders need to have. And we heard Jerry talk about the courage that it took to be vulnerable, the courage that it took, he's doing this entire strategic planning, portrait of a graduate work. He's got the community, the board, all the stakeholders involved, and he had the courage to pause. Yeah. I mean, that, I know it maybe doesn't sound that like it. Okay, that is could have been a job loss moment for him.
Yeah, for sure.
Name that. It doesn't sound like it's that big of a decision, but it took a lot of courage to stop a process like that. And I think he spoke about the need for being willing to be courageous in that space. It's interesting, the fear that you talk about, because what I was thinking about is what makes someone more courageous than another, and what what kinds of fears get in the way of someone not bringing courage every day. You're going to love this. Look at this. Can you read it?
This courage. What if we practice courage every single day? Yeah, I love that.
Right here next to my computer, like having to, as a verb, reminder of what that looks like, because it can be so hard. So again, my question is, what do you think gets in the way? Let me start over. What sets people apart from being able to be courageous and stand in the face of fear versus others that can't?
Oof. I don't think I'm good enough or have perspective enough to know the answer that would apply to everybody. But I guess in my limited experience, man, I would say individuals who have seen and faced darker things are typically not moved by are typically harder to move and shake from their convictions. Mm-hmm. So I would bet money that a teacher or an administrator, teacher, whoever, employer who is making waves and shaking and going against convention, I would bet money that somewhere along the lines in their story, they've experienced deep tragedy or adversity or difficulty, loss, things that have made their skin a little bit harder to face the criticism and the scrutiny of other people, and not necessarily be fazed by it. I feel like there's also probably a dynamic where those individuals have kind of seen the worst, and so that they're not necessarily afraid of something that pales in comparison. I don't know if this makes any sense.
It totally does. And I think the thing I would add to it is there's probably a sense of resiliency. So like, I don't, like an example, as a district administrator, I maybe don't want to go against the grain, stand up for something at a board meeting, whatever scenario, because I'm afraid I'm going to lose my job. Yeah. And if that's a fear that you have, and Jerry talked about that as a real fear, then you're less likely to do that, versus someone who has lost their job, who has had to start over, who maybe has done that multiple times and knows it's going to be okay on the other side. And typically there is a greater, it always ends up being better on the other side anyway, right. But willingness to take a risk about something that they might be afraid of because they have that resiliency or that resilient attitude, could be part of it too.
Totally.
Well, we're kind of down the rabbit hole now. Let's maybe go, anything else about kind of that idea with Jen about the future isn't coming, it's already here, that you want to bring up, or should we move on?
No, we should move on. I'll just say this last little tag. I think one of the things for me that I took away from the episode was that comfort kind of kills adaptability. And growing in kind of discomfort is very, you don't see that often taught and modeled in the upper levels of whatever career or vertical you're in, right? A lot of the systems and things we create is purpose to create more comfortability, not less. But when you look at, if you look back at your life and you think about the time that you grew the most, it is 100% going to be a time when you felt uncomfortable. It's not, they're diametrically opposed almost. So from that episode, that was one thing that I think got surfaced that I really liked.
Yeah. Well, and how often do we go find things that make us uncomfortable? Like, how often do we seek out experiences and situations that make us uncomfortable? I mean, I can think of 3 things right now that are on my horizon that have me scared to death. I'm super uncomfortable about it, but I'm leaning in because I like the idea of the growth and progress that it helps me make as a human.
I love it. Totally agree. Can I go with my episode?
Yeah, let's go.
I would want to highlight the episode with Matthew and Aaron, not only because I triggered the crap out of him, but the kind of highlighting theme with that episode was we're measuring kids on a world that is gone. We are still teaching preaching, training, whatever, and then measuring kids on stuff that is not only not going to be relevant in like a year, 2 years, 5 years, but it isn't relevant now, you know. And I feel like this and another theme that connects with all of these themes is we've actually been doing this for a long time.
Right.
It's not like AI is not just automatically made stuff we're teaching and measuring irrelevant. It's been irrelevant, but again, the rise of AI is making it so much more apparent, right? And so like standardized tests, they ignore all human skills. Okay, that might be a big statement. I might have to walk that back in the future, but typically speaking, standardized tests struggle to measure and assess human skills. AI can very easily memorize and regurgitate information on a test or on a Scantron. And so, you know, we're seeing such more apparent and visible, tangible realization that what we've been measuring on is so irrelevant, right?
Well, and okay, so there is all that, which I agree 110%. But the other thing about standardized assessments that I think that we sometimes forget is that they are about labeling and sorting children.
Wow.
And they're about defining what human potential they have or don't have. And it's on a bell curve. And so we are going to see students who see them, who basically the information coming back labels kids. And I know firsthand children that their self-esteem went down, their image of themselves. They would say, I'm not a reader. I'm no good at math. And that was all defined by a measure and a metric versus thinking about what is their human potential? What are their strengths? What are their talents? And how do we help them see those strengths and gifts? And I think as we move into this AI world, we are going to need those strengths and talents so much more than am I good at math or am I a good reader? And how do we tap into those? And so while I think standardized assessments measure the wrong thing, I also think they damage how we see ourselves and how teachers see kids.
Okay. I'm going to do a story time. I'm going to try to make this really quick. I'm probably going to talk super fast to try to condense this down.
I love it.
And if you're watching, you can just play back slowly. So I was a terrible student in so many ways.
Right.
I actually got put. Don't agree. Don't do too much. In middle school, I got put into a class that was called the SLD class, Slow Learning Disability class. I don't know if even that's a thing anymore. Slow Learning Disability. That's what I was labeled as. And we had to take tests separately. We had to do reading assignments separately, sometimes math assignments separately. We had to go into a separate room. We had whole separate lines we had to walk into and all this sort of stuff. And I remember getting made fun of. Kids walking past us in the line saying, that's the SLD class. Look at the slow learning dummies, literally chanting that. And just horrible, you know, just, and mind you, and I was a fighter. So, you know, things happened, you know, not my best time, but,
was this like at young elementary or middle school?
Honestly, God, I can't even remember. I can't remember. It was elementary school. It would have had to be elementary school.
My son, my youngest, was in that same class and labeled that same way. And and it does things to people's self-esteem.
Yeah. So here's what's crazy. So, right, I've carried that shame, that fear, that just brokenness for a long time. It wasn't until this was probably about 6, 7, 8, maybe 10 years ago at ProSolve, right? Travis and I start ProSolve at age 19. We start going around, we're traveling, we're doing professional development training. We create this thing called the SLED program, Students Leading Education. At some point in time, Travis and I are having conversations about expanding the company and whatever. And so he's like, hey, you're not just doing professional development anymore. You're doing a lot of stuff. Can you think of a new position you like? I said, dude, I don't care about none of that stuff. You come up with something. So we start brainstorming and he's like, okay, well, you're doing a lot with the SLED program. What if we make your title the student leadership development, whatever, right? Student leadership, director of student leader director of student leadership development, right? So I'm like, yeah, sure, whatever, boom, boom, boom. A couple months later, we're speaking at all these conferences, we're doing all this stuff. I have this big keynote I'm about to give, and it's in front of like 400 teachers or something like that. I can't even tell you what state it's in because I don't remember. And as I'm getting ready to go up on stage, they're announcing me. And the announcer says, please welcome to the stage, Arvin Ross, the director of SLD. I stood on stage. It did not dawn on me at all. I walked, I mean,
I've never heard this story.
Yeah, I walk up on stage and I start crying. I'm like, yo,
Arvin.
What a crazy full circle moment where that term SLD that just represented so much shame and just brokenness and just inadequacy. Now I'm standing on stage getting introduced as the director of SLD. It rocked me to a place where I still to this day, I'm just like, that was crazy.
What did you do? Did you tell him the story?
Oh yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. I sat there and I was like, guys, I'm a wreck right now. Y'all gotta give me a minute. And, just kind of walk through the whole thing. And it was such a crazy moment that I just hadn't expected to happen. Yeah. But I think you're totally right on our assessments, kind of labeling and then causing these scars in some of our students.
We label and we sort kids. We wonder why we have achievement disparities, and we don't tap into natural strengths and talents. And I think, that's, to me, I don't know, like that is one of the more compelling reasons to balance our whole assessment portfolio, the way we measure kids, with things that really elevate who they are as a uniquely human being.
Yes.
So Amy is watching and said, I was your teacher, Arvin. Not really, but for kids like you. And Amy is a champion for the neurodivergent kids that are different that show up differently, and finding what their unique talents are, and then structuring learning experiences that allow them to really thrive. And I think that was the other part of Aaron and Matt, that yes, AI is unavoidable. AI literacy is a buzzword. We had some really great unavoidable truths, but the one that stuck with me was around designing learning experiences where kids can actually create versus consume content. And I even think that was your unavoidable truth at that episode. So what really stood out to you around that whole immersive experiential learning?
I mean, it speaks volumes to me because, not only did at some point in time, that was a large piece of what I did for the company was design immersive experiences, but it also speaks to me because I did not have language for this when I was in school. I didn't even have language for this at the beginning of my career. But when I started designing immersive experiences, I found language for the reason why I am who I am today. I found language for the reason why I was pulled out of the darkness and pulled out of the craziness of my childhood. It was because I was in immersive environments. I did not have language for it.
That's the language that you found.
Yeah, it's the concept of immersion. It's me realizing that when I was in a space where gang life was normal, drugs were normal, right? Alcohol was normal. Fighting was just normal. Being this macho, like, just absolutely being too cool. When I was immersed in that kind of an environment, it was who I adapted to it. I became that thing. And then the moment I was pulled out of that, thank God for my mom, I was going through what we had to go through. And surrounded by teachers who actually cared, who took the time to stop and speak my language and meet with me and do all the things that they did, I adapted to that environment. I was immersed in a completely different culture, and it caused me to completely change the direction of my life. And so it resonates with me so deeply because I don't think that we fully understand what creating an immersive environment is.
I mean, that's speaking to me in a way that I haven't felt before. And I design immersive environments all the time. Like the thinking behind that, I never really put it together with what you said, the story of being immersed and then you having to adapt. And I think about how we create those experiences for kids Now, your story, you adapted and it maybe wasn't positive, but like, let's think about an immersive experience where kids have to adapt in a positive way, in a way that leverages those strengths or brings out some of their talents.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I
Is that what you're talking about?
yes. So to me, it has nothing to do with curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
It has nothing to do with the testing. It has everything to do with the person that's leading that classroom.
Okay.
I felt connected to the teachers that took the time to stop and ask me questions.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, it's like they brought me into their way of thinking about the things that I was engaged in.
Mm-hmm.
And I could see, okay, doing homework is not stupid. It's not irrelevant, right? Coming to school prepared. Like one of the biggest shifts, this is so stupid. I can't believe I'm about to expose myself. One of the biggest shifts in my school life was realizing that I needed to go to sleep on time.
Mm.
And it say what?
I don't think that's stupid.
Well, okay, maybe it's not stupid. But the only way that I got to that point was because teachers stopped and kept on asking me, why are you so tired? Why are you yawning so much? You're literally known for yawning. And just random stuff like that to me, this is just normal. I stay up all night. I'm either out doing crazy things at night or I'm playing video games at some point or whatever. But at some point I realized that to them, that was weird. Like to my teachers, that was not normal. That was abnormal. That was not something that made sense at all. And through however many conversations it took, bless their hearts, I adopted their way of thinking about it because I seen it and I was enmeshed in it. The best way that I can kind of describe like what I'm thinking about as it relates to measuring the right thing or the wrong thing, it's like we're not measuring the fire in our students' eyes. It's like we're measuring how well they sit still, and then we wonder why that fire is burning out. It's like we're not taking the time to measure or assess or even think about the things that are making them come alive. Right. And how to connect with that to bring them into our frame of reference.
Right.
We're not doing it. And then when they're not interested and they're completely irritated with school, we just accept it.
Yeah. To me, you're speaking of really, that is like why teachers, I would say 99.9% of teachers went into education to do exactly what you are saying, to care for students, to know them on a human to human level, to think about their needs, what are their passions, what is relevant to them, and design learning experiences around that. And I believe that compliance piece, our system, our standardized assessments has stolen that from teachers and put in place the scope and sequence, put in place, here's all the things you have to cover so that at the end of the school year, your students will achieve this level on this assessment. And I've seen it play out. I've stood in front of 9,000 teachers and made those same expectations in place, that you follow the scope and sequence as it's intended for the fidelity of the curriculum, because I thought we were doing right by kids. Yeah. And really what I've learned is that in the absence in focusing on that, we instead have missed the mark on that human to human connection, that human relationship, and that ability to design experiences that are really relevant for the learners that are in front of us. And I think Aaron opened my eyes to that. Yeah. And on our Empowering Minds session last week, he opened my eyes to, I think his quote was something like, if you're not using AI to figure out how to design cool, immersive learning experiences, you've got something wrong with why you're using AI. And so I appreciate your story. Carlos is on with us today, and he's talking about how his wife, who is an educator of over 31 years. I didn't even know that, Carlos. That's super cool. Says that educators are dependent on activity planning and curriculum versus really kind of upholding inquiry and connection. If you just put a big essential question in front of kids and get them curious, they will discover, they will open, they will find the information, find the answers because they want to know the answer. That, I mean, as humans, we're curious beings. And so when we take that away from them, I think Carlos is absolutely right.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm reading what he's saying right now. When you consider the natural elements of learning, it starts with a yearning to be visible and continues with a desire to belong. That, first of all, dude, that's a bar.
I know. Hold on. I want Carlos. You want to come online with us?
Oh my God, can we do that? Can we bring him online?
Jenna, why don't you send Carlos the link to LinkedIn in mail, like the direct message him in LinkedIn, the link. And Carlos, if you click on the link and join us, we can chat a little bit about what you're talking about. So we'll see if this works, Arvin.
Yeah, talk about unscripted and uncharted.
Yeah,
while we're waiting for
going
him.
forward, we could be. So let's see what if we can get Carlos in here.
Yeah, let me say this while we're waiting for him.
Yeah.
Travis stole this from me years ago, and I'll never forgive him for this. This is one of my favorite quotes, and I want to say it's like Saint Exupery or something like that. But it goes, if you want to build a boat, do not drum up people to do work, but instead inspire them to hear the endless hum and drone of the sea. And what it talks about is this idea that there's two different ways that you can build a boat or let's say teach a class to learn something. You could sit down and you could tell them, hey, if you want to build a boat, learn geometry so you can cut the wood in certain shapes, learn about the ocean and weather and go tell this student, hey, you go cut down some trees, you go get some tools, you go learn how to stitch a sail together, blah, 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 blah. And then you will have your whole classroom. You guys will together effectively build a boat. Mm-hmm. Or you can spend 20 minutes, 10 minutes talking about the hum of the sea, the feel of being buoyant on top of the water, the sound of seagulls chirping, the smell of salt water, the feel of the sun on your skin, the open vista of nothing but just ocean and sky. If you paint a picture of that well enough, it sinks deep down into the students, where when they go home and they go to sleep at night, they wake up and they're smelling salt water in their room. They wake up in the morning and they're hearing seagulls chirping. They're walking on their way to school and they're desiring to feel the buoyancy of a boat in the middle of the water. And then when they wake up in the next morning, they'll figure out, how can I build a boat to get there? What can I do to get to the middle of the ocean? What can I do to feel and experience this amazing thing that this person is talking about that I have a mild understanding for? And I think that's what we're talking about right here, is how do we instill in them that desire as opposed to just telling them what to do? Absolutely.
And we need more of that, not only in our classrooms, but with our teachers and in our workplace. I mean, wouldn't you agree? Like that, I think that for me, coming to ProSolve has been one of the biggest ways that you and Travis have led, is more around in the inspiration and then stepping back and letting people build their boat.
Yeah. Well, this is completely off topic, but I know I mentioned like podcast episode. It might have actually been a couple episodes ago, but the Greeks have this word called exegesis, and it's used in many different ways, but one of the primary ways it's used is to reference this idea of leadership and teaching. Mm-hmm. And in it, the whole concept it comes from this root word that is to draw out, draw out. Mm-hmm. And our method of teaching, at least in the States, or at least in this day and age, is to put in. And to pour, to make our students into vessels and pour knowledge into them, and then have them pour a little bit of it out every couple of weeks. And it's just such a different model, where their belief is that, no, within you have the answers, to the ability to find the answers that you need. And my job is to just teach you how to use that to find those answers. I think Carlos is in the background with us.
Oh, I don't see him yet, but let's see.
Oh, Carlos is on the way. Okay, he's on the way.
Well, Megan just posted something that I think really does speak to what you said. I love this. Experience before instruction, reflection before reaction, purpose before performance. Like that, if that was kind of your mantra of how you designed and shaped learning, brilliant. Amy's had a couple of things around this idea of foundational skills. And I think that this is really, really important to name, because yes, kids need strong foundational skills, and whether it is in math or reading, writing, like those foundational skills are essential for them to be able to build that boat, to do that inquiry. And so I think, in some ways, is the like an approach would be just a balanced approach of building foundational skills along with inquiry. I also think you can build foundational skills through inquiry-based experiences. They may be, everything is developmentally appropriate, age appropriate. So it's more scaffolded for primary kids. I remember this first grade classroom that the teacher set the stage where they wanted to learn about marine wildlife. And those kids took that project and ran with it. And the thing was she allowed them to do it. They were learning to read, they were learning to write all along the way. So look who's here.
Hey!
The magic of this virtual world. This is crazy.
I love this.
You guys are contributing to my ADHD. You know what I mean? It's just like I'm trying to stay focused, but I can't, man. It's too good. It's too good.
How are you, Carlos?
I'm all right. Thanks so much. We're on the eve of some big stuff launching tomorrow for our work, and so but this stuff is like I pop in when I can, and it's just so good every single time.
Well, what you were talking a little bit about your wife, who is a career educator, and talk to us a little bit about some of your thoughts around learning experiences, whether it is in the classroom or in the work that you do, and Arvin, you do around out of school time.
Yeah, sure. I mean, look, and I saw someone earlier talk about foundational skills are important, and I totally get it. I don't want to dismiss it. I do. That's in that piece that I shared about my wife. It's an over dependence. We should depend on structure. I mean, that's a key element of learning. You need discipline, you need guardrails, you need some level of strategic direction, because that, as an adult, that's just a foundational skill. You have to learn how to work within boundaries and parameters. You can't just run amok. Right. But there is something to understand that as human beings, there are certain developmental stages in life.
Yeah.
And these stages, adolescence, particularly middle, high school, actually, I would say the K-12 realm, that is a different developmental period than, let's say, post-secondary. And so you have to seize on the connection piece, because young people, they're hardwired. And Dr. Adriana Galvan, who's an amazing psychologist out of UCLA, I've worked with her in the past, talks about that young people are impressionable and they want to please, they want to be seen, they want to be valued, and oftentimes the learning ecosystems that we've designed, they don't have time for that, because it's mass learning, it's mass education, it's all mass produced. And so the idea of giving priority to developmental kind of issues within a young person's life in a K-12 environment, it's just like, how do you replicate that? It's hard. It's hard to. But you can't dismiss it. You need fundamentals, which is when you talked about, Arvin, the light in their eyes, right? Yeah. Like, how do you measure that? That's exactly the speaking word piece I wrote for Lights On After School last year, which is there is data that cannot be ignored. I talk about this idea that this idea of a connection being formed, windows to our soul, are the primary indicators of engagement and impact, not always considered data or fact. Yet they cannot be ignored.
Come on. Okay, you're speaking my language. My question to you is, how do you do that? Like, what would you prescribe for not only educators, but for employers, right? I mean, we've talked in so many times, so many episodes about how many employers are firing like Gen Z or like young people after like 2 months of working, because it's just like, what's going on? What do you prescribe to people in leadership to do that?
Yeah, I'll tell you, it happened today during our goal building time. We were as a team of leaders here at Mizzen. We are in the throes of our how do we establish our priorities and goal development kind of strategy. And I talked about, like, as an executive leader, one of the things that I've struggled with in the past, because of just how I've experienced my professional world, I struggle with telling people what I want. Like, this is what I want. And that insecurity of being open and unabashed about, like, this is what I want, has followed me throughout my career.
Why do you do that?
Yeah,
I don't know. I think it's being the oldest. It's, some of the conditions that I grew up in, being an English language learner. Like, I came to this country as an immigrant. I had to learn the English language at 8 years old, 7 years old. And I've always, this idea that when you immigrate to the US or a country that's not your own, you have to assimilate. Latinos, assimilation is a big part of our development, especially if you came in the 80s. Right? So you shelve your language, you shelve your culture, you shelve it all so that you can get with the program. And so I think a lot of that, kind of like giving up what's meaningful to me. I don't know. I'm just kind of like psychoanalyzing myself. And that's where it came from.
Arvin, I told you this episode was part therapy, and here it's happening right here with her.
So I don't know, but that's where it comes from. I think part of it is just this constant habituation of giving things up that I need or want, so that others can benefit, right? So that's maybe part of it. But I think there's a question around how do you do it, Arvin? So when we looked at the anatomy of a goal or a priority, there are certain things that you follow to establish goals, KPIs, strategies, tactics. There's so much technical language. But I said at the base of all of that, goal setting is about ultimately what you want. What do you want? And we had to peel back all of that technical language to distill developing a goal down to this idea of, this is what I want, and let people know. And then you can work from that and go, does this want become a strategy? And so I think the same thing can be said about the classroom. You could sit there and go, yeah, we can learn about staying connected to ourselves. And what does it mean to really know yourself, have identity? What scares you? What do you aspire for or towards? So you can get down to that level of rudimentary human-centered kind of question, inquiry, and then you can attach that to other elements of, for example, career pathway development.
Yeah.
So if you're going to form a career for yourself, don't start with like, what kind of degree do I want to get? You should start with like, who am I?
Yeah.
Who am I? What's my identity? And then build from there.
Well, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think Amy posted, Amy's been with us in this conversation around foundational and what experiences are the right ones. She says, I love experiences, but who is having the ones we need in school? And this expert novice bias is a tricky thing. I'm curious about that because I'm a little bit unsure what she means by expert novice bias. Does anybody else?
I don't, but I was just about to say when reading that earlier, we need to pull her onto this, but we don't have enough time.
I know. All of a sudden, it's like I love the conversation and the community engagement, and we are at the end. So. Yes.
But Amy, I will find some way to sneak you into the back door of this podcast and have you online to talk about this. But if you can just give a little bit more context to what you said to that last comment, hopefully we'll be able to circle back and put it back on the screen before we finish off today's podcast.
Carlos, thanks for jumping on with us.
No problem. Yeah, thanks for having me. And this is cool. I'm gonna thank you for this kind of informal thing. It's available. We just kind of like jump on and hang out. And I love it.
Who would have known that you were just watching and now you were on? So thank you.
You put me on the spot. All right, y'all. Finish out.
Catch you later.
Appreciate it. Okay, we have a couple more comments that I see down there. I think metacognition needs to be at the center of what we do. Okay,
oh my gosh, I love Megan. Like, I'm gonna try the hearts. Oh, it's not working, Jenna. But I love the idea of metacognition being at the center of what we do. And I actually will that's another podcast, and we should probably bring Megan on to talk about metacognition, because I think it's an reflection is underused, underutilized.
Okay, so it's not the end. That means it is unavoidable truth time. That is a point in time in the podcast where we're getting ready to end, and we have to talk about what are some of our unavoidable truths that were surfaced in this episode. This is not just for Michelle and I, or Carlos for that matter, who just hopped on. Anyone that is listening, please, at this point in time, post in the chat or comment on the video somewhere an unavoidable truth that you have just come to as a result of this podcast, or that is related to this podcast. Michelle, do you have one? Because I think I'm still thinking about mine.
Me too. This is hard. This is hard because the unavoidable truth. Yeah, I guess for me, on tonight's episode, the unavoidable truth is really why standardized tests need to go. So I think I've been so focused on standardized assessments being, measuring the knowledge age, and we're out of the knowledge age. We're in the intelligence age. We no longer need standardized assessments. But tonight, the unavoidable truth for me is about the damage standardized assessments do for kids, that we label kids, we sort kids, we give perception of what kids can and can't do as a result of these assessments. And hearing your story tonight, Arvin, really touched me. So thank you for that, because I think that you're not the only student that has been in the SLD room and who has lived with that scar. And you were put there because of the standardized assessment. Did you need supports? Yes, but I think that labeling and sorting was a factor. So my unavoidable truth is we've got to do better by kids.
Yeah, I love that. I actually completely forgot about that whole segment of my life until I probably haven't shared this story in probably, I don't know, since it happened. But for me, I think what I would say is my unavoidable truth for this episode, from me kind of realizing and sharing that, you sharing about your son as well, which to be honest with you, I've never heard anybody mention anything about being in that kind of a class. I've never heard anybody say anything about it. So I just, up until you saying that, I thought that was just a thing that the school district I was a part of did in Florida. I just had no idea. But you sharing that, even Carlos sharing his kind of story about not being able to ask for what he wants. Mm-hmm. My unavoidable truth is I think conversations need to start happening, like about personal experiences in education. It sounds kind of light and fluffy, but my unavoidable truth is that conversations about education and about the impact that personal education is, or educators had on you personally, need to happen. That's my unavoidable truth.
That is the unavoidable truth. Megan says, education is in for a shakeup. It is. And our local education areas need, that's not the acronym. I can't even think of what the acronym is.
I can't. No. Nice try.
Anyway, I'll start over. Megan says that education is up for a shakeup, which she's right. And our school districts need to support with care and empathy in the transition. And so that couldn't be truer tonight. Another unavoidable truth, the teacher shortage is real. Amy says, absolutely. An unavoidable truth, Carlos mentioned, was balancing personal and technical development. So true, so true. And Amy told us a little bit about what expert novice is. It's part of the science of learning. And so she's got some about cognitive bias. Okay, I'm seeing that now. Now I'm connecting. So thanks, Amy. Thanks everyone for being part of the discussion. This was really fun tonight, Arvin.
Yeah, we need to do these little recaps more often. I love it. And we definitely need to make it a consistent thing where we pull on random people from the audience.
Oh.
That was so dope. Carlos, thank you for having a good camera and a good mic, because one of my fears is if we do that, it's going to be somebody in like a bathing suit or like a wife beater just sitting in their lounge room, and then we're getting canceled. Thanks for being fully clothed, Carlos. We appreciate you so much for that.
So big shout out to Jenna for producing the podcast with all the fun things that make this a real production. So we love you, Jenna. You can find us on all the popular social medias. Jenna's dropping TikToks and Spotify and LinkedIn Live and YouTube and all the places. And should we talk about what's next week?
Yes, but first I will say Megan gave an explanation for the acronym. It is Local Education Agencies. Sorry for the acronym. Local Education.
No, like you would think a career educator like myself would know what an LEE is.
Yeah. Yes, that is correct. Next week we're gonna have Jacob Cantor on with us and Wes Kreisel.
We think.
Wes
I
Kreisel.
don't know. Wes from Orange County. If you know Wes, you know who we're talking about. So Jacob and Wes.
Yes, we'll figure it out, or we will figure out how to pronounce his last name properly next week. So tune in for that. And we're going to just talk about some bold ideas, some hot topics, some fresh cuts, some hot takes. So please do hop in on LinkedIn or on YouTube, on Spotify as well. We are actually talking about hopping onto Apple Podcasts within the next week or two. So you guys can check us out there if you haven't been able to. But please do tell your friends, hop in here in these live discussions. Part of what makes this so fun and so interesting is all of the things that you guys say, and now the possibility of bringing you on now that we know that that's a possibility. So
people will be lining up. They'll be paid. It'll be a paid entrance.
There are so many apps that have horror stories with stuff like this. I'm not going to bring them up. We're just going to go ahead and move and close the episode. But we need to probably create a policy or something, some sort of vetting process to make sure that we can see that they're fully clothed and all of that.
You are so worried about fully clothed.
Listen,
Jenna, we are going to set him up.
Listen,
I've got it all figured out.
No, don't do it. I'm done. That will be my last episode. Okay. Deuces. Thank you guys so much for joining. Please hop in next week and we will see you guys. Thanks.
Bye, everybody.